I'm standing on the sidewalk outside my own home, watching snowflakes land on my trembling hands. My breath comes out in white clouds, each exhale a reminder that I'm freezing while they're inside, warm and comfortable. Through the frosted window of the dining room, I can see everything with painful clarity. My husband Terrence is carving the turkey, not just any turkey, the 20-pound organic bird I spent 5 hours brining, seasoning, and roasting to golden perfection. He's laughing, that fake booming laugh he reserves for impressing people. And sitting right there in my chair, at my table, wearing a dress that costs more than our monthly mortgage, is Tiffany, his ex-girlfriend, the woman his mother brought as a surprise guest to our Christmas dinner. They raise their wine glasses, my wine, from the collection I've been building for years, and toast to something I can't hear. But I can imagine. I can see Tiffany's hand lingering on his arm just a little too long. I can see his mother, Gertrude, in her excessive fur coat and gaudy gold jewelry, smiling with satisfaction as she surveys the scene she orchestrated. They think I'm broken. They think I'm going to my sister's house to cry into a pillow and maybe call a lawyer next week. They think they've won. But here's what they don't know. In exactly 30 minutes, the smart thermostat I control from my phone will shut off the heating system. The temperature inside will drop degree by degree until they're shivering in their designer clothes. And that's just the beginning. Because the deed to this house, this beautiful 3-story Victorian mansion with the wraparound porch and the heated floors and the gourmet kitchen where I've slaved for 3 days straight, that deed has exactly one name on it, Noelle Richardson. My name. Not his, not ours, mine. They wanted an unforgettable Christmas. I'm about to give them exactly that. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, 2 days before Christmas Eve. I was in the kitchen at 6 a.m, flour dusting my favorite apron, the one my grandmother gave me before she passed. The recipe book was open to her handwritten notes for sweet potato pie, the edges of the paper yellowed with age and splattered with decades of love. I had a list, a very specific, carefully planned list of every dish I needed to prepare for what was supposed to be the perfect family Christmas. Mac and cheese, not the box kind, but the real deal with 3 types of aged cheddar, Gruyere, and a panko crust that would shatter perfectly under a fork. Collard greens slow-cooked with smoked turkey legs and a hint of apple cider vinegar. Cornbread dressing with sage from our garden. Candied yams that would glisten like amber. Green bean casserole. Cranberry sauce made from scratch with orange zest and cinnamon. And the centerpiece, that magnificent turkey I mentioned, plus a honey-glazed ham as backup because Gertrude always complained there wasn't enough food. The kitchen smelled like heaven. Cinnamon, nutmeg, roasted garlic, butter, brown sugar, all of it mixing into this perfect symphony of holiday comfort. I had Christmas music playing softly from the speaker. Nat King Cole was singing about chestnuts roasting on an open fire, and for a moment I actually felt happy. Hopeful, even. Terrence walked in around noon. Not to help, not to ask if I needed anything. He walked in, looked at the chaos of pots and pans and mixing bowls covering every surface, and said, "Babe, you're going overboard again. My mother's just going to criticize it anyway. Why do you even try?" I stopped stirring the gravy, turned to look at him. He was still in his pajamas, holding his phone, probably scrolling through sports highlights or texting his boys. He hadn't even showered yet. "Because it's Christmas, Terrence," I said, keeping my voice level. "Because this is what families do. We gather, we feast, we celebrate together." He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "Whatever. Just don't get upset when she starts her usual routine. You know how she is." And he left. Walked right back upstairs to play video games in the bedroom, while I stood there with gravy slowly burning on the stove because my hands were shaking too much to stir properly. That was day 1. 14 hours of cooking. Terrence contributed exactly 0 minutes of help. He did, however, contribute several complaints about the noise, the smell of onions making his eyes water, and why couldn't we just order catering like normal people with money? Normal people with money. That phrase stuck in my throat like a bone. Day 2 was more of the same. I was making the desserts, red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting, pecan pie, my grandmother's famous bread pudding with bourbon sauce, and a chocolate Yule log because Gertrude had mentioned once, 3 years ago, that she liked them. I was operating on 4 hours of sleep. My feet were swollen, My back was screaming, and I had a burn on my forearm from the oven rack that was definitely going to scar. Terrence came into the kitchen around 3 p.m. He opened the refrigerator, stared at the Tetris puzzle of covered dishes I'd carefully organized, and said, "There's no room for my protein shakes. Can you move some of this stuff?" I was holding a piping bag full of frosting. I very calmly set it down, turned to him, and said, "Terrence, I have been cooking for 2 days straight for your family's Christmas dinner. Your protein shakes can wait 1 day." His face did that thing. That pinched, irritated thing that made him look exactly like his mother. "It's not just my family, Noelle. It's our family. Why do you always make it sound like you're doing me a favor?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the entire red velvet cake at his head. Instead, I smiled. "You're right, honey. Our family. Could you maybe help me by cleaning up some of these dishes? I'm running out of counter space." He looked at the sink piled high with mixing bowls, measuring cups, pot, and pans. He looked at his phone. He looked back at me. "I've got a really important call with Jake about the Fantasy League playoffs. Maybe later." He never came back to help. Christmas Eve morning arrived with fresh snow and my complete exhaustion. I had been up since 4 a.m. putting the final touches on everything. The turkey was in the oven, filling the house with that irresistible aroma of herbs and butter. The ham was glazed and ready. Every side dish was prepared, just needing to be reheated. The table was set with our good china, the set I'd inherited from my grandmother along with this house, though Terrence seemed to have forgotten that detail. I'd even decorated. Fresh pine garland on the staircase with white lights. The Christmas tree in the living room was 8 feet of perfectly arranged ornaments and tinsel, candles on every surface. The stockings hung by the fireplace, each one personalized. I'd bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, wrapped them in expensive paper with elaborate bows, and arranged them artfully under the tree. The house looked like something from a magazine. It looked perfect. I looked like hell. My hair was in a messy bun. I had bags under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. My hands were raw from washing dishes. My clothes were stained with various food splatters, and I smelled like a combination of turkey, vanilla, and exhaustion. Terrence came downstairs around 11, freshly showered, wearing the expensive cashmere sweater I'd bought him for Christmas. He looked at the spread I'd laid out on the dining table, just the appetizers. The main meal would come later, and nodded. "Kyle looks good," he said, high praise from him. Then he checked his watch. "Mom said she'll be here at 2. Her flight landed early." My stomach dropped. 2? I thought she was coming at 5. "She changed it. Wants to spend more time with us." He said this like it was good news. Like his mother arriving 3 hours early to a dinner I'd been choreographing down to the minute was a gift. I took a deep breath. Fine. I could adjust. I always adjusted. At exactly 2:15 p.m., because Gertrude was never precisely on time, only fashionably late enough to make an entrance, the doorbell rang. Terrence practically ran to answer it, like a puppy greeting its owner. I smoothed down my apron, tried to fix my hair, and prepared myself for whatever was coming. The door opened, and there she was, Gertrude Richardson, in all her excessive glory. The fur coat that probably cost more than a small car. The gold jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, rings, earrings. So much gold she looked like she'd robbed a jewelry store. Her hair was done in those tight, perfect curls that required weekly salon visits. Her makeup was immaculate, if you liked the look of someone who'd applied it with a trowel. "Terrence, my baby boy!" She swept in, bringing a cloud of perfume so strong it made my eyes water. She hugged him, kissed both his cheeks, and then looked past him directly at me. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes went cold. "Noelle," she said, my name sounding like a disappointment. "Still wearing that old apron, I see." "Merry Christmas, Gertrude," I said, keeping my voice warm. "It's so good to see you. How was your flight?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Adequate. Though I had to fly commercial this time. My usual pilot was unavailable." She said this like it was a tragedy on par with natural disasters. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was someone else on the porch. A younger woman, maybe 28, with long blonde hair, legs for days, and a designer outfit that screamed money. "Oh," Gertrude said, her smile growing wider. "I hope you don't mind, but I brought a guest. This is Tiffany. She's an old friend of Terrence's. They went to college together." Old friend, college. I knew exactly who Tiffany was. She was the girlfriend before me, the one Terrence had dated for 3 years, the one his mother had absolutely loved, the one he'd supposedly broken up with because they wanted different things. And now she was standing in my doorway on Christmas Eve, holding a bottle of wine and smiling at my husband like no time had passed at all. "Tiffany?" Terrence's face lit up in a way it hadn't lit up for me in months, maybe years. "Wow, I had no idea you were coming." "Surprise," she said, her voice like sugar and poison mixed together. She hugged him, and the hug lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. I stood there, flour still on my apron, exhaustion in my bones, and watched my husband embrace his ex-girlfriend in the house that I owned, at the Christmas dinner I'd spent 3 days preparing, while his mother looked on with absolute satisfaction. "Well," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "The more the merrier. Please, come in." What else could I say? What else could I do? This was an ambush, carefully planned and executed, and I'd walked right into it. They came inside like they owned the place. Gertrude swept through the foyer, her critical eyes scanning every detail of my decorations. I could see her cataloging everything, preparing her arsenal of backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults. "Yo, Noelle," she said, running her finger along the garland on the staircase. "How quaint. Very homemade. Did you use artificial pine? I can always tell. Real pine has a certain quality that artificial just can't replicate." It was real pine. I had spent 2 hours arranging it myself, pricking my fingers on the needles until they bled. "It's real, actually," I said, my smile feeling like it might crack my face. "Is it? Well, it must be a cheaper variety then. The needles look so uniform." She moved on before I could respond, leaving me standing there with my jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might shatter. Tiffany was doing a tour of her own, but hers was more calculated. She was looking at the family photos on the walls, the ones of Terrence and me on our wedding day, our anniversary trips, the life we'd built together. And she was smiling this little smile, like she knew something I didn't. "What a lovely home," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Terrence, you never told me you lived somewhere so cozy." Cozy. The word hung in the air like an insult wrapped in cellophane. This house had 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a library, a home theater, and grounds that required a landscaping service. But she called it cozy. "We like it," I said, emphasizing the we. "It's been in my family for generations." Gertrude's head whipped around. "Your family. Terrence told me he bought this house." There it was, the first crack in the facade. Terrence looked like a deer caught in headlights, his mouth opening and closing without sound. I could have corrected her right then. I could have said, "No, Gertrude, I inherited this house from my grandmother, along with a substantial trust fund. Terrence hasn't paid a single mortgage payment because there is no mortgage." But I didn't. Because I had been raised to be gracious, to be the bigger person, to not embarrass my husband in front of his mother and his ex-girlfriend, no matter how much they were trying to embarrass me. "We should get the appetizers out," I said instead, pivoting toward the kitchen. "Dinner won't be ready for another few hours." I spent the next 3 hours in a special kind of hell. Gertrude positioned herself in the kitchen doorway, watching me work, offering commentary on every single thing I did. "You're basting the turkey again? That seems excessive. It's going to be too moist. Those collard greens look a little pale. Did you use enough seasoning? Bread pudding? How traditional. I suppose some people still make the old recipes." Meanwhile, in the living room, I could hear Tiffany and Terrence laughing. Actually laughing? The kind of genuine, easy laughter that Terrence and I hadn't shared in months. She was telling stories about their college days, about parties and pranks and all these shared memories that I wasn't part of. And Gertrude would occasionally drift in there, adding her own commentary, talking about how she'd always loved Tiffany, how she'd been so disappointed when they broke up. "You two were so perfect together," I heard her say. Remember that Christmas when you came to visit us in Martha's Vineyard? That was a magical holiday. I was in the kitchen, alone, pulling a ham out of the oven with tears streaming down my face. Not from the heat, from the absolute, crushing realization that this was intentional. Every bit of this was designed to make me feel small, unwanted, replaceable, but I kept going. I finished every dish. I arranged everything on the serving platters with the care of a museum curator. I set the dining table with candles and fresh flowers and place cards written in calligraphy. I changed out of my stained clothes and put on the red dress I'd bought specifically for this dinner, did my makeup, fixed my hair. When I finally called them to the table at 7 p.m., I looked presentable. The table looked like something from a magazine spread. And I had convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, once they tasted the food, once they saw how much effort I'd put in, things would shift. I was wrong. We sat down, Terrence at the head of the table, because of course he had to sit at the head of the table even though I'd done everything. Gertrude to his right, Tiffany to his left, me at the other end, as far from everyone as possible. I said grace. I thanked God for family, for health, for the food we were about to eat. Gertrude sighed audibly, like I was wasting her time with my prayer. I started passing dishes. The turkey, golden and perfect. The ham, glistening with honey glaze. The sides, each one a work of art. Gertrude took a small portion of turkey. She cut into it, took a single bite, and her face did this thing, this expression of profound disappointment. "It's dry," she announced. The table went silent. Terrence looked up from his plate. Tiffany stopped mid-reach for the mac and cheese. "It's... what?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dry," Gertrude repeated, louder this time. "The turkey is dry, Noelle. Didn't you baste it?" I had basted that turkey every 30 minutes for 5 hours. It was not dry. It was succulent. It was perfect. But she was sitting there, telling me it was dry, and I could see Terrence nodding along like a puppet. "Yeah, babe," he said, not even looking at me. "It is a little dry." He hadn't even tasted it yet. Tiffany took a delicate bite, made a sympathetic face, and said, "I'm sure you tried your best, Noelle. Cooking a turkey is so hard. I usually just order from a restaurant." Something inside me snapped. Not completely. Not yet. But a crack formed, deep in my foundation. "The cranberry sauce is too tart," Gertrude continued, warming up to her role as food critic. "And these greens, are these even seasoned? They taste like boiled leaves." She put her fork down with a clatter, reached for her wine glass, my wine, and took a long drink like she needed to wash away the taste of my cooking. "And what is this?" She picked up her plate, looking at the food like it was garbage. "Is this really what you consider appropriate for Christmas dinner? Terrence? Honey? Didn't I teach you to have higher standards?" That was it. That was the moment. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, and I heard the unmistakable sound of my food being scraped into the trash can, the turkey I'd spent hours on, the sides I'd made from my grandmother's recipes. Everything. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "What are you doing?" Gertrude turned to me, her face the picture of innocence. "Oh, I'm just clearing my plate, dear. I'm afraid I can't eat this. It's just not palatable. I think I'll order something." "Terrence, why don't you call that nice Italian restaurant, the one that delivers?" "That's actually a good idea, Mom," Terrence said, already pulling out his phone. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, this man I'd married 5 years ago, this man who'd promised to love and cherish me. This man who was sitting there, letting his mother throw my food in the trash while his ex-girlfriend watched with barely concealed amusement. "Terrence," I said, my voice shaking. "Are you serious right now?" He glanced up, annoyed. "What? Mom's right. The food is kind of off. It's not a big deal. We'll just order something." I spent 3 days cooking this meal. "And we appreciate that," Tiffany chimed in, her voice saccharine. "But sometimes things just don't turn out the way we hope. It's okay to admit when something doesn't work." I turned to her. This woman who had no business being in my house, sitting at my table, eating my food, or rather, criticizing it. "I'm sorry," I said, not sorry at all. Who invited you exactly? Her eyes widened in mock surprise. Oh, I thought this was a family gathering. Gertrude said, Gertrude isn't the hostess here. I am. This is my house, my dinner, and you are a guest who showed up uninvited. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Gertrude's face turned purple. How dare you speak to my guest that way? I invited Tiffany because she's like family to us. Unlike some people who trap men with their grandmother's money and call it love. The words hit me like a physical blow. There it was. The real reason for all of this. Gertrude knew. She knew about the inheritance, about the house, about the fact that her son hadn't contributed nearly as much to our life as he'd led everyone to believe. Excuse me, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You heard me, Gertrude continued, emboldened now. You walk around here acting like you're so perfect, like you've done Terrence such a favor by marrying him. But we all know the truth. You needed him more than he needed you. A woman your age, from your background, you were lucky to catch him. Terrence said nothing. He sat there, looking at his phone, pretending to browse the Italian restaurant menu while his mother eviscerated me. My background? I repeated. Oh, what exactly is wrong with my background, Gertrude? She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't play the victim. You know exactly what I mean. Your little family with your humble beginnings. Terrence deserves someone from his own class. Someone like Tiffany, who understands refinement, who knows how to conduct herself in proper society. I looked at Tiffany. She was trying to look uncomfortable, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. This was going exactly how she'd hoped. Get out, I said. Gertrude laughed. Actually laughed. Get out. This is my son's house. No, I said, my voice growing stronger. This is my house, my grandmother's house, my family's house that was built in 1892 and has been passed down through 4 generations. And I'm telling you, as the owner and the hostess, to get out. Terrence finally looked up from his phone. Noelle, calm down. You're overreacting. It's Christmas. I'm overreacting. My voice rose despite my best efforts to control it. Your mother just threw my food in the garbage, insulted me, insulted my family, and brought your ex-girlfriend to our Christmas dinner as some kind of power play, and I'm overreacting. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about, Gertrude said to Terrence, shaking her head. She's so emotional, so dramatic. This is why I worry about you, honey. You deserve peace in your home. You're right, Mom, Terrence said, and my heart stopped. Noelle, you're ruining Christmas. You're making everyone uncomfortable. I think you should go. Time stopped. The words hung in the air like toxic gas. What did you say? I whispered. Just go to your sister's for the night, Terrence said, not meeting my eyes. Cool off. We'll talk tomorrow. You're kicking me out? Of my own house? On Christmas Eve? It's not like that, he said, but his voice was weak, uncertain. You're upset. You need some space. Gertrude stood up, smoothing her dress. Yes, that's a wonderful idea. Noelle, why don't you go visit your sister? I'm sure she's having a lovely little gathering. Much more appropriate for you. I looked around the table, at the food I'd slaved over, now barely touched, at the decorations I'd hung with care, at the gifts under the tree, wrapped with love, at my husband, who wouldn't meet my eyes, at his mother, who was smiling victoriously, at his ex-girlfriend, who was trying to hide her smirk behind her wine glass. Fine, I said. I'll go. I walked to the foyer, grabbed my purse, my phone, my keys. Terrence followed me, but he didn't try to stop me. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable but not uncomfortable enough to do the right thing. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We'll sort this out. I turned to look at him one last time. This man I'd loved. This man I'd cooked for, cleaned for, supported through job losses and family drama and all of life's difficulties. This man who was choosing his mother over me on Christmas? Terrence, I said calmly, you're going to regret this. He actually rolled his eyes. Don't be so dramatic. I stepped out onto the porch. The cold hit me like a wall. I was in my thin red dress, no coat. My coat was inside, but but I'd be damned if I went back in there for it. I heard the door close behind me. Then I heard something worse. I heard the lock click. He locked me out. I stood there on my own porch, in my own house, locked out by my own husband. Through the window, I could see them. Gertrude was already on her phone, presumably ordering food. Tiffany was laughing about something. Terrence was pouring more wine. They looked relieved. Happier without me there. The snow started falling harder, each flake a tiny, cold reminder that I was on the outside of my own life, looking in. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's solid ground. You can build from there. I walked to the garage, my heels crunching in the snow. I had a spare key for the side door. I let myself in, got into my car, and started the engine. The heater kicked on, slowly warming the frozen air. I sat there for a moment, watching my breath form clouds, feeling the rage and humiliation and pain war inside my chest. And then I pulled out my phone. The car was getting warmer, but I was still shaking, not from the cold anymore, from rage, pure, crystalline rage that was clearing away the fog of hurt and humiliation and leaving behind something sharper, something dangerous. I looked at my phone. The screen showed 7:43 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Through the garage window, I could see the lights from the house, my house, glowing warm and inviting. I could almost hear them in there, probably already digging into whatever overpriced Italian food they'd ordered, laughing about how they'd successfully gotten rid of me. My thumb hovered over my sister's contact. That's what they expected me to do, wasn't it? Call my sister, cry on the phone, show up at her door broken and defeated, spend Christmas being pitied, spend the next week being advised to work it out and be the bigger person, and all those other phrases people use when they want you to accept being treated like garbage. I didn't call my sister. Instead, I opened a different app. The smart home app that controlled every system in the house. The house that was in my name. The house that my grandmother had left me in her will, along with enough money to maintain it, to pay the property taxes, to keep it running without ever needing Terrence's contribution. My grandmother had been smart. She'd made sure the house could never be taken from me. The deed was in my name alone. Terrence wasn't on it. We'd discussed it when we got married. He'd wanted to be added, said it wasn't fair, that it was only mine. But my grandmother's lawyer had advised against it, and I'd listened. For once in my accommodating, people-pleasing life, I'd listened. The smart home system showed everything. Thermostat, 72 degrees. Security cameras, armed door locks, engaged. Entertainment system, active. Every light, every appliance, every comfort, all controlled from my phone, all under my authority. I sat there in the warm car, staring at that app, and something shifted in my mind. A door opening. A possibility emerging. They wanted to play games. They wanted to humiliate me, disrespect me, throw me out of my own home on Christmas. Fine, let's play. But first, I needed confirmation. I needed to make absolutely sure I understood my legal position. Because what I was thinking, what I was planning, required me to be completely, unassailably in the right. I scrolled through my contacts and found him, Marcus Wheeler, my grandmother's attorney, who'd handled the estate and now handled my personal legal matters. It was Christmas Eve, late evening. He was probably with his family, but Marcus had always told me, Noelle, if you ever need me, day or night, you call. Your grandmother was one of my dearest friends, and I promised her I'd always look after you. I called. He answered on the third ring. Noelle, is everything all right? His voice was concerned, grandfatherly. I could hear Christmas music in the background, voices, laughter, his family gathering, the kind I was supposed to be having. Marcus, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm sorry to bother you on Christmas Eve, but I need to know something. About the house. Of course. What's going on? I told him. Not everything. I didn't have time for everything, but the essentials. That Terrence and his mother had kicked me out. That they were currently occupying the house. That Terrence had locked me out. There was a long pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed. Gone was the warm, grandfatherly tone. This was the voice of a lawyer who'd spent 40 years protecting his clients. Noelle, Listen to me very carefully. The house is solely in your name, correct? Yes. And Terrence is not on the deed, the title, or any ownership documents. No, we kept it separate. You advised me to. Good. Then legally, he's a resident of your property, but he has no ownership claim. By locking you out, the legal owner, he's actually committed an actionable offense. And his mother, as a guest, has absolutely no rights to exclude you from your own property. My heart started beating faster. But so what can I do? You can call the police right now and have them removed for unlawful exclusion. You can file for immediate eviction. Given that he locked you out, you have grounds for emergency legal action. He paused. But Noelle, it's Christmas Eve. If you go the legal route tonight, it's going to be messy. Police, paperwork, drama. Is that what you want? I thought about it. Police showing up, Terrence trying to claim ownership, having to prove everything while standing in the snow, the neighbors watching. It would work, but it would be crude, inelegant. What other options do I have? I asked. I could almost hear Marcus smiling through the phone. Well, you're asking the wrong question. The right question is, what do you want to happen here? What did I want? I wanted them to suffer the way I'd suffered. I wanted them to feel cold and unwanted and humiliated. I wanted them to realize exactly what they'd done. I wanted them to understand that you don't kick a woman out of her own home and expect no consequences. I want them to understand they made a mistake, I said quietly. Then may I suggest something? Marcus said. The house is smart automated, yes. You can control the systems remotely? Yes. And you have documentation proving ownership? The deed, the title, the inheritance paperwork? All of it, in my safety deposit box, but I also have copies on my phone. Perfect. Here's what I recommend. You have every legal right to control your own property. If you want to adjust the temperature, that's your right. If you want to lock them out tomorrow morning and call the police for trespassing, that's also your right. Just document everything. Take screenshots. Save recordings from your security cameras. If this ends up in divorce court, and Noelle, it probably will, you want a clear record of exactly what happened. You're saying I should. I'm saying nothing illegal, Noelle. I'm saying you're the homeowner. Act like it. And tomorrow morning, when you're ready, call me. We'll file emergency eviction papers and get them removed properly. But tonight? He paused. Tonight, it's your house, your rules, your thermostat. I felt something warm spreading through my chest. Not quite happiness, something fiercer, something that tasted like justice. Thank you, Marcus. Merry Christmas, Noelle, and honey. Your grandmother would be proud of you. She never let anyone push her around either. He hung up. I sat there in the warm car, looking at my phone, at the smart home app still glowing on the screen. My house, my rules, my thermostat. I opened the app and navigated to the climate control. The temperature was still set at 72 degrees. Comfortable, cozy, perfect for a Christmas Eve celebration. I adjusted it. Slowly, deliberately. I dragged the slider down. 68 degrees. They probably wouldn't even notice immediately. Give it 20 minutes, maybe 30. But I wasn't done. I went to the security system and pulled up the camera feeds. The house had cameras in every main room. Living room, kitchen, dining room, hallways. Not the bedrooms or bathrooms, but everywhere else. My grandmother had installed them for security, and I'd upgraded them to high-definition smart cameras. I could see them. Right there on my phone screen. The dining room camera showed Terrence and Tiffany sitting close together on one side of the table, sharing jokes, their heads almost touching. Gertrude was holding court at the head of the table, my seat, the one I should have been sitting in, gesturing dramatically with a glass of red wine. There were takeout containers spread across the table, white cardboard boxes with Italian restaurant logos. They were eating pasta and breadsticks and salad, laughing and having a wonderful time. Without me. My Christmas dinner, what little remained of it after Gertrude threw most of it away, was nowhere to be seen. Probably all in the garbage by now. 3 days of work, gone, treated like trash. I watched them. Studied them. Terrence was more animated than I'd seen him in months, laughing at something Tiffany said, touching her arm. Gertrude was basking in the scene she'd orchestrated, looking satisfied and powerful. They really thought they'd won. I switched to the living room camera. The Christmas tree was still lit, the presents still arranged underneath. My presents. The ones I'd carefully chosen, wrapped, labeled with love. Were they planning to open those tomorrow? Were they planning to give my gifts to each other while I was wherever they thought I'd be? The anger crystallized into something cold and sharp. This wasn't just about kicking me out. This was about erasing me, replacing me, having their perfect Christmas without the inconvenient wife who didn't fit Gertrude's standards. I looked at the thermostat control again. 68 degrees. Still too comfortable. I dragged it down to 65. Then I opened another section of the app, the one that controlled the door locks. Every door in the house had a smart lock that could be controlled remotely. Front door, back door, garage doors, even the interior doors. I could lock or unlock any of them from my phone. I went through systematically. Front door, lock code changed. Terrence's fingerprint, disabled. Back door, same. Garage door, locked. Opener disabled. His access to my house was now completely gone. Only my codes, my fingerprints, my controls worked now. But I could still get in anytime I wanted. The power this gave me was intoxicating. They were in my house, eating my food, well, their takeout, but still, drinking my wine, sitting on my furniture, enjoying my heating, and they had no idea that I controlled it all. I checked the time. 8:15 p.m. I decided to give it an hour. Let them really settle in. Let them think they'd gotten away with it. Let them relax and celebrate and feel victorious. And then I'd show them what it felt like to be cold. While I waited, I went through the rest of the app. The entertainment system, the lights, the Wi-Fi. Everything was under my control. I could turn off the Wi-Fi and kill their phones, internet. I could turn off lights room by room. I could do so many things. But I had to be smart about this. I couldn't be petty or childish. I had to be strategic, calculated. I had to make them uncomfortable enough to understand what they'd done, but I couldn't do anything that Marcus couldn't defend if this went to court. Adjusting my own thermostat in my own house, perfectly legal. Changing my own locks, absolutely my right as the homeowner. I pulled up my text messages and found my sister's contact. I should probably tell her what was happening. She'd be expecting me to show up soon, crying and devastated. Instead, I typed, "Hey sis, long story, but I won't be coming over tonight. Everything's fine. Actually, everything's going to be better than fine. I'll explain tomorrow. Love you. Merry Christmas." She responded immediately. "What happened? Are you okay? Do you need me to come get you?" "I'm good, really. Sitting in my car, making plans. Don't worry about me. Worry about Terrence." "Oh no. What did he do?" "Like I said, long story. But let's just say he's about to learn a very expensive lesson about who actually owns the house he's been living in. OMG, call me if you need me. And Noelle, whatever you're planning, Grandma would approve." I smiled at that. Yes, she would. The temperature in the house was dropping now. According to the app, it was down to 66 degrees. I checked the camera feeds. Gertrude had pulled her fur coat tighter around herself. Tiffany was rubbing her arms. Terrence looked confused, probably wondering why it was getting cooler. Let them wonder. I adjusted the thermostat again, down to 62 degrees. Then I did something else. I went into the Smart Home app's advanced settings and found the scheduling function. I programmed the temperature to continue dropping, 1 degree every 15 minutes, until it hit 55 degrees. That's cold. Not dangerous, not freezing, but cold enough to be deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Cold enough that they'd need their coats. Cold enough that they'd see their breath. And the beauty of it? The thermostat was in the hallway upstairs. They'd have to go up there to check it, and when they did, they'd find that the controls didn't work, because I'd locked them out of the system. Only my phone could change it now. I watched the cameras as Gertrude stood up, still wrapped in her fur, and said something to Terrence. On the camera, I couldn't hear the audio. That feature was disabled for privacy, but I could read her body language. She was complaining about the cold. Terrence got up and walked out of frame, presumably heading to check the thermostat. I switched cameras, following his movement through the house. He went upstairs, stood in front of the thermostat, and I watched him press buttons. Frown, press more buttons, pull out his phone, probably trying to access the app. But the app required the master account to make changes. The master account that was mine, that I'd never given him admin access to because, well, it was my house and my system. I watched him try for 5 minutes before giving up and going back downstairs. It was 9 p.m. now. The house temperature was at 63 degrees and dropping. According to the weather app on my phone, it was 28 degrees outside with snow still falling. Inside my warm car, I was perfectly comfortable. Inside the house, they were starting to realize something was wrong. I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit in the car all night. I was going to go somewhere I could watch this unfold properly, somewhere I could be comfortable and warm while they slowly froze. There was a 24-hour diner about 2 miles away. They had Wi-Fi, coffee, and most importantly, they'd be open all night on Christmas Eve for the hospital workers getting off shift. I backed out of the garage carefully, navigating the snowy driveway, and drove to the diner. The roads were mostly empty, just a few other cars out, probably people heading to late church services or to relatives' houses. The diner was warm and bright, decorated with slightly sad Christmas decorations, tinsel, and a small fake tree in the corner. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a name tag that said Lorraine, greeted me with a sympathetic look. "Merry Christmas, honey. Just you tonight?" "Just me," I confirmed. "Rough night?" "You have no idea." She led me to a booth in the corner, brought me coffee without asking, and said, "Take your time. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve, but if you gotta be at least you got coffee." I thanked her and pulled out my phone. The smart home app was still running. The temperature was down to 61 degrees now. I watched the camera feeds while sipping my coffee. Tiffany had gone to get her coat from the front closet. Gertrude was pacing, her arms crossed, her face pinched with displeasure. Terrence was on his phone, probably trying to figure out what was wrong with the heating system. Good luck with that, I thought. There's nothing wrong with the system. The system is working perfectly. It's doing exactly what I'm telling it to do. I ordered a slice of pie, apple, warm, with vanilla ice cream, and settled in to watch. The temperature hit 60 degrees, then 59, then 58. On the cameras, I could see their breath now, little clouds forming when they talked. Gertrude was gesturing angrily at Terrence, clearly demanding he fix it. Tiffany looked like she was regretting her decision to crash my Christmas. My phone buzzed. A text from Terrence. "The heat's broken. I can't figure it out. Can you call someone to fix it?" I stared at that text. The audacity. The absolute audacity of this man to kick me out of my house and then ask me to fix the heat for him. I didn't respond. I just ate my pie and watched the temperature drop to 57 degrees. Another text. "Noelle, are you there? It's getting really cold. Mom is complaining." Mom is complaining, not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong," not "please come home," just "Mom is complaining." I took another bite of pie. It was delicious. The temperature hit 56 degrees. 15 more minutes, and it would reach my target of 55. A call this time. Terrence's name flashing on my screen. I considered not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to hear his voice, wanted to hear if there was any remorse there yet. I answered, "Hello?" "Noelle, thank God. The heat's not working. I don't know what's wrong with it. Can you come back and help fix it or call the repair service? Your grandmother's guy? What's his name?" "You want me to come back?" I said, my voice calm. "Yeah, just to help with the heat. It's getting really cold in here." "Interesting. Because a few hours ago, you told me to leave. You locked me out, Terrence. You chose your mother and your ex-girlfriend over me. On Christmas." Silence. Then, "Look, I know you're upset, but can we deal with this later? Right now we need heat." "You need heat," I corrected. "I'm perfectly warm where I am." "Where are you?" "That's not really your concern anymore, is it?" "Noelle, don't be like this. Just tell me how to fix the thermostat, or give me the password for the app." "No," I said simply. "No. What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. The house is mine. Terrence, the thermostat is mine. Everything in that building is mine. And I'm not going to help you be comfortable in my house while you entertain your mother and your ex-girlfriend. His voice got harder. You're being childish. I'm being childish. You kicked me out on Christmas Eve. You let your mother throw my food in the garbage. You locked me out of my own house, but I'm the one being childish. Just give me the damn password, Noelle. No. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from satisfaction, from power. The temperature hit 55 degrees and stopped there, just as I'd programmed it. Cold enough to be miserable, cold enough to make them understand, but not cold enough to cause any real harm. I wasn't trying to hurt them, just to teach them a lesson. I ordered more coffee and watched as they huddled together in the living room, coats on, looking increasingly miserable. Gertrude's perfect hair was getting messy. Tiffany's makeup was probably running as she shivered. Terrence looked angry and confused, like he couldn't understand how this had happened. And me, I was warm and caffeinated and planning my next move, because tomorrow was Christmas morning. And tomorrow, they were going to find out exactly whose house they'd been sleeping in. I stayed at the diner until midnight, nursing coffee and watching the camera feeds like they were my personal reality show. And in a way, they were the Christmas Karma Show, starring 3 people who were learning a very expensive lesson about hospitality and respect. The temperature had stabilized at 55 degrees, cold enough to be deeply uncomfortable, but not dangerous. I had researched it while sitting in the booth. At 55 degrees Fahrenheit, you're cold and miserable, but you're not at risk of hypothermia. Not unless you stay exposed for many hours. And they had coats, blankets, the ability to huddle together. They were fine. Physically fine, emotionally and psychologically. That was another story. Through the cameras, I watched them try everything. Terrence had attempted to manually override the thermostat. Impossible, since I'd locked him out of the system entirely. Gertrude had demanded they build a fire in the fireplace, but the gas fireplace was also controlled through the smart home system, controlled by me. And I'd turned it off. Tiffany had suggested they just leave, go to a hotel. But when Terrence went to the garage to get his car, he discovered what I'd already programmed. The garage door wouldn't open. Not without my override code. His car was effectively trapped. They were stuck. In my house. Freezing. With no way to fix it and no way to leave. It was beautiful. Around 11 p.m., I watched Gertrude try to order an emergency HVAC repair service. Through the camera, I could see her on her phone, gesturing angrily. But it was Christmas Eve, nearly midnight. No one was coming. Every service she called either didn't answer or quoted her an emergency holiday rate of at least $500 just for showing up, with no guarantee they could actually fix anything. She eventually gave up, wrapping herself tighter in her fur coat, looking significantly less imperious than she had a few hours ago. Tiffany had curled up on the couch under every throw blanket she could find, shivering and scrolling through her phone, probably trying to figure out if any of her friends could come rescue her. But the roads were getting worse. The snow was really coming down now. And it was Christmas Eve. Everyone was with their families, except me. I was in a diner, warm and caffeinated, watching my husband learn about consequences. Terrence kept trying to call me. I'd silenced his calls after the 3rd one, but I could see the notifications piling up. 12 missed calls, 15 text messages, each one probably some variation of, "Please help us," or "This isn't funny," or "You're being crazy." I wasn't being crazy. I was being strategic. At midnight exactly, I decided to escalate. They'd had 4 hours of mild discomfort. Now it was time for the psychological warfare to begin. I opened the Smart Home app and navigated to a feature I'd almost forgotten existed: the whole house audio system. My grandmother had it installed so she could play classical music throughout the house. I'd upgraded it to connect to all our streaming services and digital files, including our voice memos, including every conversation that had ever been recorded in the house through the smart assistants. I spent 20 minutes searching through the archived audio files, and then I found it. The perfect weapon. A recording from 6 months ago. Terrence was on the phone with his college buddy Jake, thinking I was out grocery shopping. But I'd come home early, and the smart home system, which was set to record when it detected voices for security purposes, had captured the entire conversation. Terrence's voice, crystal clear. "Yeah, Man, I don't know how much longer I can take it. My mom's right. Noelle just doesn't fit with our lifestyle. She's too, I don't know, too common. Like, she tries so hard, but she'll never be on our level, you know? I keep thinking about Tiffany. Remember Tiffany? Now that was a woman who understood quality. My mom loved her. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just married Tiffany instead. This whole thing with Noelle, it was a mistake, man. A comfortable mistake, but still a mistake. I'd been devastated when I first heard it, accidentally playing back the recording while checking the security system. I'd cried for hours, but I'd saved it, backed it up. Some instinct told me I might need it someday. Today was that day. I uploaded the audio file to the house system, created a loop, and set it to play on every speaker in the house. Living room, dining room, kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, everywhere. Then I hit play. Through the camera feeds, I watched their reactions in real time. The confusion as Terrence's voice suddenly filled the house. The growing horror on Terrence's face as he realized what was playing. The shock on Tiffany's face. Pleased shock, I noticed. And Gertrude. Gertrude looked satisfied until the part where Terrence said, "And my mom, God, I love her, but she's so controlling. She treats me like I'm still 12. Sometimes I just want to tell her to back off and let me live my own life, but I can't. I'm too much of a coward. So I just let her run everything, including my marriage. It's pathetic, really." Her face went purple, absolutely purple with rage. The recording looped, played again, and again. That damning conversation filling every corner of my house. Impossible to escape, impossible to turn off, because only I had the master controls. Terrence was frantically trying to unplug speakers, but they were hardwired into the walls, part of the house's electrical system. Gertrude was screaming at him. I couldn't hear her, but I could see her mouth moving, see her pointing, see the fury in her body language. Tiffany looked like she was trying to decide if she should comfort Terrence or join Gertrude in tearing him apart. It played for 30 minutes. 30 glorious minutes of Terrence being forced to listen to his own words, his own betrayal, his own cowardice, while trapped in a freezing house with his mother and his ex-girlfriend, neither of whom were very happy with him at the moment. Then I stopped it. Let silence fall. Let them sit with what they'd just heard. But I wasn't done. Next, I went after their stomachs. They'd thrown away my food, mocked my cooking, ordered expensive takeout instead. But that was hours ago. It was past midnight now. They had to be getting hungry again. I opened a different app on my phone, the banking app, the account that Terrence thought was his checking account, the one he'd been using for years, the one his credit cards were linked to, the account that I'd opened, that I'd funded, that was, technically, in my name with him as an authorized user. I removed his authorization. Then I called the credit card company. They had 24/7 customer service and reported his cards as lost. They were immediately deactivated. New ones would be mailed in 5 to 7 business days. I checked the food delivery apps on my phone. I could see the order history. He'd been trying to order food. Chinese food at 12:30 a.m., pizza at 12:45 a.m., even a grocery delivery at 1 a.m. Every single one had been declined. Payment method failed. Please update your payment information. Through the cameras, I watched him get increasingly frustrated, jabbing at his phone, probably wondering why all his cards suddenly didn't work. I watched Gertrude get her own wallet out, try her credit card. But she was just a guest. Her card wasn't saved in his apps. And by the time she manually entered it, most places had stopped accepting orders for the night. They were cold. They were hungry. They were turning on each other. It was approximately 1:15 a.m. when the real fight started. I couldn't hear them, but I could see everything. Gertrude pointing at Terrence, her face twisted in anger. She was clearly bringing up the recording, the things he'd said about her. Terrence was trying to defend himself, his hands up in a placating gesture. Tiffany was watching with barely concealed entertainment. Then Gertrude did something that made me actually laugh out loud in the diner. She grabbed her expensive designer purse, wrapped her fur coat tighter, and headed for the front door. She was leaving. She was actually going to walk out into the snow rather than stay another minute with her ungrateful son. But when she got to the door and tried to open it, nothing happened. She tried again, pulled harder. The door didn't budge, because I'd engaged the electronic deadbolt, the one that could only be opened with a code or a fingerprint. My code. My fingerprint. She was locked in. I watched her pound on the door, saw her mouth moving in what I could only assume were very unladylike words. Terrence came running over, tried his code, nothing. Tried the door handle, nothing. Tiffany tried the back door, also locked. The garage, already sealed. They were trapped, completely, utterly trapped in a 55-degree house with no food, no heat, no way out, and rapidly deteriorating relationships with each other. Lorraine, the waitress, came by to refill my coffee for the 5th time. "You doing okay, honey? You've been smiling at that phone for the past hour." "I'm doing great, actually," I said. "Best Christmas Eve I've had in years." She looked at me like I was slightly crazy, but she'd worked in diners long enough to know not to ask questions. "Well, Merry Christmas then." "Merry Christmas," I replied, and meant it. By 2 a.m., they'd given up trying to escape and had retreated to the living room. They'd pushed the couches together, piled on every blanket in the house, and were huddling for warmth like penguins. Their breath was visible in the air. Gertrude's perfect hair was a disaster. Tiffany's makeup had fully given up. Terrence looked exhausted and defeated. I decided to give them one small mercy. I adjusted the temperature up to 58 degrees. Not comfortable, but not quite as punishing. Just enough that they wouldn't actually freeze, but not enough that they'd get any real rest. Then I checked the weather forecast. The snow was supposed to continue until dawn, accumulating another 4 to 6 inches. The roads would be terrible. Even if they somehow got out of the house, they wouldn't be able to go far. Perfect. I looked around the diner. It was emptying out. Even the hospital workers had finished their shifts and gone home. Lorraine was wiping down tables, looking tired but content. Christmas music was still playing softly from the radio. Silent Night was on, which seemed darkly appropriate. All is calm, all is bright. Not in my house, it wasn't. I pulled up the security camera one more time. Gertrude was actually asleep, or pretending to be, wrapped in her fur coat in what looked like the good tablecloth from the dining room. Tiffany was scrolling through her phone, probably reading the room and realizing this little adventure had been a massive mistake. Terrence was just staring at the ceiling, looking like a man who was starting to understand he'd miscalculated badly. My phone buzzed. Another text from Terrence. "Noelle, please. I'm sorry. Just let us out, or turn the heat back on. Mom's not doing well with the cold. Please." I read it twice, looking for sincerity, looking for actual remorse. Mom's not doing well. Not, "I'm sorry I kicked you out." Not, "I'm sorry I chose them over you." Not, "I'm sorry I let my mother insult you and throw your food away." Not, "I'm sorry about what I said about you to Jake." Just, "Mom's not doing well." I put the phone down. Didn't respond. At 3 a.m., I ordered a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. It came with little marshmallows and a candy cane. Lorraine brought it over with a tired smile. "Last call, honey. We close at 4 for a few hours, even on Christmas. Gotta let the morning crew come in and set up." "That's fine," I said. "I think I'm ready to go soon anyway." "You got somewhere to sleep tonight? I'd hate to think of you spending Christmas in your car." I smiled at her kindness. "I've got somewhere to go. Thank you for asking." She patted my shoulder. "Whatever you're dealing with, I hope it gets better. Nobody deserves to be alone at Christmas." "I'm not alone," I said, looking at my phone, at the camera feeds showing 3 miserable people trapped in my house. "I've got plenty of company." By 3:30 a.m., I'd had enough surveillance. I'd made my point. They'd been cold and uncomfortable for 8 hours now. They'd been forced to confront Terrence's lies. They'd been trapped together with no escape and deteriorating tempers. They'd been hungry, frustrated, and humiliated. They'd learned what it felt like to be powerless, to be at someone else's mercy, to have your comfort stripped away without warning or explanation. Now it was time for phase 2. I paid my bill, left Lorraine a $50 tip because she'd been kind to me on what should have been a terrible night, and walked out into the cold pre-dawn darkness. The snow had finally stopped. The world was covered in white, pristine and beautiful. My car was buried under about 5 inches of fresh powder. I cleared it off with a brush from my trunk, started the engine, and let it warm up while I made a phone call. Marcus answered on the first ring. He was definitely awake. I could hear other voices in the background, probably his family opening presents early. Noelle, Merry Christmas. How's it going? It's going well, I said. They've spent the night at 58 degrees, locked in, unable to leave. I have everything documented on the security cameras. Are you ready to move forward? Absolutely. I'll have the eviction papers ready to file when the courthouse opens on the 26th. In the meantime, I can have an officer do a welfare check this morning if you'd like. Get them officially removed from the property. What time do you think would be best? Well, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. It is Christmas morning, maybe around 8 a.m., right around the time families are waking up to open presents. I smiled. That sounds perfect. I'll make the call. Officer Rodriguez is working today. He's a good guy, very by the book. He'll handle it professionally. Just make sure you're there with your documentation. I'll be there. Noelle, your grandmother really would be proud. You stood your ground. I hung up and sat in my warm car, watching the sun start to rise over the snow-covered neighborhood. Somewhere in that beautiful house on the hill, my house, 3 people were having the worst Christmas Eve night of their lives. And in about 4 hours, it was going to get much, much worse for them. I decided to kill time at a 24-hour gym that was open even on Christmas. I had a membership I barely used, but it had showers, and I wanted to be fresh and perfectly composed for what was coming. I showered, did my hair, put on makeup. I'd packed a bag in my car days ago, a habit from my grandmother, who always said, "Be prepared for anything." In it was a beautiful black wool coat, black leather gloves, and a red scarf. I dressed carefully, making sure I looked like exactly what I was, the owner of a property, coming to reclaim what was hers. At 7:45 a.m., I drove back to my house. The sun was fully up now, Christmas morning bright and cold and clear. The snow made everything look magical, like a Christmas card. I parked on the street, not in the driveway. I wanted to see the whole scene unfold. At exactly 8 a.m., a police cruiser pulled up. Officer Rodriguez stepped out of the cruiser, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and the weathered look of someone who'd worked too many holiday shifts. He was carrying a clipboard and wearing a coat over his uniform. Even cops needed extra layers on Christmas morning when it was 25 degrees outside. I got out of my car and walked toward him, my heels clicking on the icy sidewalk. I'd chosen them deliberately, black stilettos that made me feel powerful, that made me stand taller. I was done being the accommodating wife. Today, I was the property owner. Officer Rodriguez? I extended my hand. I'm Noelle Richardson. Thank you for coming on Christmas morning. He shook my hand firmly. Ms. Richardson. Marcus Wheeler called me personally, said this was an urgent situation. Something about unlawful exclusion from your own property. That's correct. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder where I'd saved all the documentation. This is my house. I inherited it from my grandmother 5 years ago. The deed is in my name solely. I can show you the physical copy as well. I have it in my car. Last night, my husband and his mother locked me out. They've been occupying the property for approximately 12 hours while refusing me access. Rodriguez's eyebrows went up. Your husband locked you out of your own house on Christmas Eve. Yes, sir. I have video evidence from the security cameras. I pulled up the footage from last night, showed him the moment Terrence pushed me toward the door, the sound of the lock clicking. I also have text messages where he acknowledged locking me out and refused to let me back in. The officer watched the video, his expression growing more serious. And you're the sole owner. He's not on the deed. Not on the deed, not on the title, not on any ownership documents. He's essentially a resident of my property, but he has no legal claim to it. Rodriguez nodded slowly. And there are other people inside? His mother, Gertrude Richardson, and a woman named Tiffany Chen. Both guests. Neither has any claim to the property whatsoever. All right. He closed his notepad. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to knock on the door and explain the situation. Given that you're the documented owner and they've excluded you from your own property, they need to either let you in immediately or vacate. If they refuse, I can arrest them for trespassing and unlawful exclusion. Do you want to press charges? I thought about it. Did I want Terrence arrested on Christmas morning? Did I want that scene, that drama? Yes, I did. If they don't cooperate, yes, I want to press charges. Understood. Let's go. We walked up the driveway together, our footsteps crunching in the snow. The house looked beautiful in the morning light. The Christmas decorations I'd hung now covered in a fresh layer of snow. It looked like a picture-perfect holiday scene, except for the 3 people inside who were about to have their worst Christmas ever. Rodriguez rang the doorbell, then knocked, loudly. I checked my phone, pulled up the camera feed. Inside, I could see them all jerk awake. They'd been sleeping, or trying to, piled together on the couches like refugees. At the sound of the door, Terrence's head snapped up. He looked terrible. His expensive sweater was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. His face was pale from the cold and lack of sleep. He stumbled to the door, probably expecting it to be me, coming to apologize or beg to be let back in. Instead, he opened it to find a police officer. "Good morning, sir. I'm Officer Rodriguez. Are you Terrence Richardson?" Terrence's eyes went wide. Yes. What's this about?" "I'm here regarding a complaint about unlawful exclusion from this property. Can I come in?" I don't understand. Who made a complaint?" I stepped into view, moving from behind the officer. "I did." Terrence's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, then anger. "Noelle, what the hell? You called the police. You locked me out of my own house, Terrence. What did you think was going to happen?" Officer Rodriguez held up a hand. "Sir, I need to come inside and sort this out. Step back, please." Terrence moved aside reluctantly. Rodriguez walked in, and I followed, stepping into my own home for the first time in 12 hours. The house was freezing. I could see my breath. It smelled stale, like too many bodies in an enclosed space without proper ventilation. The living room was a disaster. Blankets everywhere, couch cushions on the floor, empty wine bottles on the coffee table. Gertrude was standing in the hallway, wrapped in her fur coat and what looked like my grandmother's Afghan. Her hair was completely destroyed, her makeup smeared. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. "Officer, this woman is harassing us. She locked us in here all night and turned off the heat. We could have frozen to death." Rodriguez turned to me, eyebrows raised. "Is that true? Did you manipulate the home systems?" I adjusted the thermostat in my own home. Yes. I set it to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold, but nowhere near dangerous. As for the locks, I changed the codes on my own security system after being excluded from my own property. That's within my rights as the homeowner. "She's lying," Gertrude spat. "This is Terrence's house. He bought it. Tell them. Terrence?" Terrence opened his mouth, but I was faster. I pulled out my phone, opened the deed document. "Officer Rodriguez, here's the deed to this property. As you can see, it's in my name only. Noelle Catherine Richardson. No one else's name appears on this document." The officer took my phone, studied the deed carefully. Then he pulled out his own phone and did something, probably checking public records to verify. After a moment, he nodded. "The deed checks out. Property is registered solely to Noelle Catherine Richardson." He turned to Terrence. "Sir, did you pay for this house?" Terrence's face flushed. It's complicated. Her grandmother left it to her, but we're married. It's community property." "Actually," I said calmly, "it's not. This house was inherited property, kept separate from marital assets. My attorney can provide documentation if needed, but the bottom line is that the deed is in my name. I was excluded from my own property, and these people have been trespassing." "We're not trespassing," Gertrude shrieked. "My son lives here." "Your son is a resident by my permission," I said, my voice ice cold. "Permission I'm now revoking. Officer Rodriguez, I want them removed from my property immediately." Tiffany appeared from the kitchen, wrapped in a blanket, looking like she desperately wished she could disappear. "Look, I don't want any trouble. Can I just call an Uber and leave?" The doors are electronically locked, Terrence said bitterly. She controls everything. We've been trapped here all night. Rodriguez looked at me. Is that true? Have you been preventing them from leaving? The doors are locked for security purposes, I said carefully. But I'm happy to unlock them right now so these people can leave my property. I pulled out my phone, opened the smart home app, and with a few taps, unlocked all the doors. There. They're free to go. The officer nodded. All right, folks, here's the situation. This is Ms. Richardson's property. She has the legal documentation to prove it. You've been asked to leave. I strongly suggest you comply. This is insane, Terrence said, but his voice had lost its anger. Now he just sounded desperate. Noelle, can we please talk about this? Just you and me? This is crazy. Crazy? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You kicked me out on Christmas Eve. Your mother threw my food in the garbage. You brought your ex-girlfriend to our Christmas dinner. You locked me out in the snow. And I'm the one being crazy. I didn't mean... You meant exactly what you did, and now you're facing the consequences. I turned to Officer Rodriguez. I want them out. All of them. Now. Gertrude drew herself up, trying to reclaim some dignity. Fine. Fine. Terrence, we're leaving. This house is a dump anyway. The heating doesn't even work properly. The heating works perfectly, I said with a smile. When I want it to. That's when Terrence seemed to fully understand what had happened. You controlled everything last night. The temperature, the locks, the recording that played. That was all you. This is my house, Terrence. Every system, every light switch, every degree of temperature, it's all under my control. It always has been. You just forgot that because I let you think you were in charge. His face crumbled. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Where are we supposed to go? He asked quietly. It's Christmas morning. Everything is closed. That's not my problem, I said. You should have thought about that before you locked me out into the snow. Officer Rodriguez cleared his throat. Sir, ma'am, I'm going to need you all to gather your belongings and exit the property. If you need assistance finding accommodations, I can provide some resources, but you cannot remain here. Gertrude marched upstairs, presumably to get her luggage. Tiffany practically ran to the guest room. Terrence just stood there, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I didn't know you could be this cold, he said. I learned from the best, I replied, looking pointedly at where his mother had been standing. Now get your things and get out of my house. While they packed, Officer Rodriguez and I stood in the foyer. He was trying to maintain his professional demeanor, but I could see the hint of a smile. Off the record, he said quietly, my ex-wife pulled something similar on me years ago. Had her mother stay with us, made my life hell, then acted shocked when I couldn't take it anymore. I get it. Thank you, I said. I just wanted my home back. Well, you've got it now. It took them 20 minutes to gather everything. Gertrude had somehow managed to pack what looked like 6 suitcases despite only staying one night. Tiffany slunk out with her overnight bag, not making eye contact with anyone. She was the first to leave, practically running to her car, which was still parked on the street. Terrence was last. He came downstairs with 2 suitcases, looking defeated and exhausted. At the door, he paused. Where do I go? He asked again, this time to me directly. You could try your mother's hotel, I suggested. Or Tiffany might have room. I really don't care, Terrence. You made your choice last night. I didn't think You didn't think at all. That was always your problem. I pulled an envelope from my coat pocket. These are divorce papers. My attorney will be in touch after the holidays. I suggest you get your own lawyer. His hand shook as he took the envelope. Noelle, please. We can work this out. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want is for you to leave my house and never come back. Gertrude appeared behind him, her fur coat pulled tight, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. This isn't over, she hissed at me. We'll sue. We'll take you for everything. Try it, I said calmly. I have 12 hours of security footage showing your behavior. I have recordings of the things your son said about me. I have documentation of every penny I've spent on this household while Terrence contributed a fraction. My attorney would love to see you in court, Gertrude. Please, by all means, sue me." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. No words came out. Officer Rodriguez gestured to the door. "Time to go, folks." I watched them trudge out into the snow. Terrence's car was still in the garage. I'd unlocked it. But when he tried to start it, nothing happened. I'd disabled it remotely last night and had honestly forgotten to turn it back on. "Car won't start," he called back. "Can you?" "No," I said simply. "Call a tow truck. Or an Uber. Figure it out." Gertrude was already on her phone, presumably calling for a car service. They stood on the sidewalk, three miserable people surrounded by luggage, on Christmas morning, with nowhere to go. Officer Rodriguez lingered for a moment after they'd moved away from the door. "You going to be all right here by yourself?" "I'm going to be better than all right," I said. "For the first time in years, I'm going to have the Christmas I deserve." He smiled then, a real smile. "Merry Christmas, Miss Richardson. And for what it's worth, I think your grandmother would be proud." "She would be," I agreed. "She taught me to never let anyone take what's mine." After he left, I closed the door and stood in my foyer, in my house, finally alone. The silence was deafening after all the chaos. I could hear the house settling, the heat starting to flow as I'd already reset the temperature to a comfortable 68 degrees. I walked through each room slowly, reclaiming it. The living room where they'd huddled in the cold, the dining room where they'd mocked my cooking, the kitchen where I'd slaved for 3 days to create a feast they'd thrown away. In the dining room, I found their Italian food containers, still on the table, half-eaten and now cold. Without hesitation, I swept them all into a garbage bag. Let them know how it felt to have their food discarded. The Christmas tree was still lit. My presents were still under it. I sat down on the floor next to the tree and started opening them. The gifts I'd bought for myself, wrapped in beautiful paper, each one chosen with care. A cashmere scarf in deep purple. A first edition of my favorite book. Expensive bath products that smelled like lavender and vanilla. A journal with a leather cover. Small luxuries I'd denied myself because I was always buying things for Terrence, for his mother, trying to win approval I'd never receive. I opened each one slowly, savoring it. The house was warming up. The Christmas music was playing. I'd turned it back on. The lights on the tree twinkled merrily. And I was alone, gloriously, peacefully, triumphantly alone. I sat there for a long time, surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbons, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Pure, uncomplicated peace. The house was mine again. Not just legally, I'd always owned it legally, but emotionally, spiritually, it was mine. Every room had been reclaimed. Every corner had been cleansed of their presence. I stood up, stretched, and walked to the window. Outside, I could see Terrence, Gertrude, and Tiffany still standing on the sidewalk, waiting for their ride. Gertrude was on her phone, gesticulating wildly. Terrence was sitting on one of the suitcases, his head in his hands. Tiffany was pacing, probably regretting every decision that had led her to this moment. They looked cold, miserable, defeated, good. I turned away from the window and walked to the kitchen. It was still a mess from my cooking marathon 3 days ago, plus the chaos of last night, but it was my mess, in my kitchen, and I would clean it on my own time. First, though, I needed coffee. Real coffee. Not the diner coffee I'd been surviving on. I started the espresso machine, a gift from my grandmother, one of her prized possessions, and while it warmed up, I went through the house turning up the heat in every room. 68 degrees, 70 degrees, 72 degrees. I made it warm, luxuriously, excessively warm, because I could. The espresso machine beeped. I made myself a perfect cappuccino, the foam just right, the way my grandmother had taught me. I added a dash of cinnamon on top, took it to the living room, and sat in my favorite armchair, the one Gertrude had been using as her throne last night. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been avoiding. I called my sister. She answered immediately. Oh my God, Noelle! I've been freaking out. What happened? Are you okay? I'm perfect, I said, and I meant it. I'm sitting in my living room, drinking coffee, and I've never been better. But last night, you said, last night, Terrence and his mother kicked me out of my house. This morning, I had them removed by the police. They're currently standing on the sidewalk with their luggage, waiting for a ride, and I'm filing for divorce. Silence. Then, holy shit. Yeah. Noelle Catherine Richardson, are you serious? Dead serious. It's over. The marriage, the pretending, the trying to fit into a family that never wanted me, all of it, done. My sister started laughing. Not a polite laugh, but a full, joyous belly laugh. Oh my God, Grandma would be so proud. She never liked Terrence, you know. She told me once that he was all show and no substance. She was right, I said, smiling, as usual. So what happens now? Now I have the Christmas I should have had all along. By myself, in my house, doing exactly what I want. You want company? I can come over. I'll bring wine and more presents, and we can talk shit about Terrence for hours. I almost said yes. Almost. But then I looked around my beautiful, quiet, peaceful house and realized something. I didn't need company. Not today. Today, I needed to be alone, to reclaim my space, to remember who I was before I became Terrence's wife. Thank you, I said gently. But I think I need today to myself. Tomorrow, though. Tomorrow I want to see you, and we'll drink all the wine and I'll tell you everything. Tomorrow, she agreed. But Noelle, I'm so fucking proud of you. You stood up for yourself. You took back your power. That's everything. After we hung up, I sat in the silence for a while longer. Then I got up and did something I'd been wanting to do for months. I went through the house and removed every trace of Terrence. His clothes from the closet, into garbage bags. His toiletries from the bathroom, into the trash. His video games, his sports memorabilia, his collection of ugly ties his mother had given him. All of it, bagged up and set by the garage door for eventual donation or disposal. Every photo of him came off the walls. Every gift he'd given me, cheap, thoughtless things that he'd clearly picked up at the last minute, went into the trash. By the time I was done, it was as if he'd never lived here, as if those 5 years had been erased. And you know what? It felt amazing. I looked at the clock. 11:30 a.m. Still Christmas morning. I'd kicked my husband out, reclaimed my house, and removed all evidence of him in under 4 hours. Efficient. I went back to the kitchen and decided to make myself Christmas dinner. Not the elaborate feast I'd prepared for people who didn't appreciate it. Something simple, something just for me. I made a grilled cheese sandwich with expensive aged cheddar and sourdough bread. I heated up some tomato soup. I poured myself a glass of red wine from the bottle Terrence had opened last night. Might as well finish it. I ate at the kitchen counter, not the dining room table. I didn't need formality. I needed comfort. The sandwich was perfect. The soup was warm and rich. The wine was excellent. I'd been saving that bottle for a special occasion, and apparently Terrence had decided Christmas Eve qualified. Well, at least it was being appreciated now. After lunch, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a bath. A long, luxurious bath in the master bathroom's clawfoot tub. I filled it with the expensive bath salts I'd been saving, lit candles, brought my wine glass, and just soaked. The warm water felt like absolution, like washing away 5 years of trying to be someone I wasn't. 5 years of making myself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. I stayed in that bath until the water went cold and my fingers pruned. Then I got out, wrapped myself in the softest robe I owned, and went to my bedroom. The bed was unmade. Terrence had clearly slept there last night, or tried to. I stripped it completely, threw everything in the wash, and made it up with fresh sheets. Clean sheets. Sheets that no one had touched but me. I lay down on my clean bed in my quiet house, and I slept. Really slept. For the first time in days. No anxiety about whether the food would be good enough. No stress about managing Terrence's mood or his mother's criticism. Just sleep. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The clock said 6:47 p.m. I'd slept for almost 5 hours. I felt reborn. I went downstairs, made myself dinner, leftover mac and cheese that I'd hidden in the back of the fridge, away from their searching hands last night. It was still delicious, even cold. Maybe especially cold. I ate standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the snow-covered backyard. Everything was pristine white, untouched, beautiful. A fresh start. My phone buzzed. I'd been ignoring it most of the day, but curiosity got the better of me. I checked the messages. From Terrence, 47 missed calls, 23 text messages. The progression was almost amusing. The first few were angry. "This is insane. You can't do this." "I'm calling my lawyer." Then desperate. "Please, Noelle. We need to talk. I'm sorry." Then pathetic. "I don't have anywhere to go. Mom won't stop yelling at me. Tiffany left me at the hotel." I didn't respond to any of them. There was also a message from Marcus Wheeler. "Papers filed. Court date set for January 3rd. You'll have full possession confirmed. Well done, Noelle." From my sister. "Still proud of you. Still want to hear everything tomorrow. Love you." From Officer Rodriguez. "Just checking in, making sure you're doing all right. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call." I responded only to the last 3, with brief thank yous. Terrence's messages went unanswered. He'd have to learn that I didn't owe him my time or attention anymore. As night fully settled over the house, I did one final thing. I went to my grandmother's writing desk in the library, the one she'd used to write letters and manage the household accounts. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the leather-bound journal she'd given me years ago. "For when you need to remember who you are," she'd said when she gave it to me. I'd never written in it. Never needed to, I thought. But now... I opened to the first page and began to write, "Christmas Day, my house today." I learned something my grandmother tried to teach me years ago, that kindness should never come at the cost of dignity, that accommodation is not the same as love, that a house is just walls and a roof until you claim it as your sanctuary. I spent 3 days cooking for people who didn't appreciate it. I spent years trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it. I allowed myself to be diminished, dismissed, and disrespected in my own home. Today, I took it all back. Terrence is gone. His mother is gone. The woman he probably wished he'd married instead of me is gone. And I am here, alone, in the house that has always been mine, remembering what it feels like to breathe without permission. Grandmother would have handled this differently. She would have seen it coming from miles away and never married him in the first place. But she also would have understood. She would have poured us both wine, looked me in the eye, and said, "Better late than never, darling. Better late than never." So here I am, late but finally here, finally home, finally myself. Merry Christmas to me. I closed the journal and put it back in the drawer. Then I went to the living room, turned off all the lights except the Christmas tree, and sat in the dark, watching the colored lights twinkle. The house was silent except for the settling sounds of old wood and the gentle hum of the heating system working properly because I wanted it to. Outside, snow was falling again. Inside, I was warm. I pulled out my phone one last time and opened the Smart Home app. Every system showed green. Every lock was secure. Every light, every degree of temperature, every single function of this house was under my control. My house, my rules, my life. I thought about Terrence, wherever he was. Probably in some hotel room, listening to his mother berate him, realizing that the comfortable life he'd been living was built on a foundation that had never been his. I thought about Tiffany, who'd come to my house expecting to witness my humiliation, and instead got trapped in a freezing building all night. I thought about Gertrude, who'd orchestrated this entire disaster thinking she could replace me with someone more suitable, only to discover that the house she was trying to claim had never been her son's to give. They'd wanted a memorable Christmas. They'd wanted to put me in my place. They'd wanted to show me that I didn't belong. Well, they got their memorable Christmas, just not the one they'd planned. And as for me, I belonged exactly where I was. In my grandmother's house. In my house. In the place that had been waiting for me to finally claim it completely. I raised my wine glass to the empty room. "Merry Christmas, grandmother. I said out loud. Thank you for the house. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for teaching me that the only approval I ever needed was my own. The Christmas tree lights sparkled in response, and I could have sworn I felt her there with me, proud and amused and absolutely unsurprised that it had come to this. I finished my wine, turned off the tree lights, and went to bed. My bed. In my house. Alone and absolutely content. The last thing I did before turning off the light was send one final text to Terrence. The locks have been changed. The divorce papers are filed. Don't come back. You were never on the deed, and you were never home. Merry Christmas. Then I blocked his number, set my phone to Do Not Disturb, and fell asleep in my warm, quiet, reclaimed sanctuary. Outside, snow continued to fall on the perfect Christmas morning I'd finally given myself,